Weight Shift Control 7-2 Takeoff and Departure Climbs. Now, let's dive into the art of crosswind takeoffs. While the dream is to always take off straight into the wind, reality sometimes has other plans. So, here's the lowdown on how to handle those crosswind scenarios without breaking a sweat. First things first, check out those wind indicators like the trusty windsock before you even hit the runway. You want to know if a crosswind is coming your way. During taxi and right before takeoff, keep that windward side of the wing slightly lowered to avoid any unwanted lift. We want a smooth takeoff, not a surprise liftoff. The crosswind takeoff isn't vastly different from the regular one, but you've got a couple of extra moves up your sleeve. As you speed up and steer down the runway, brace yourself because that wing is going to try to weather vane into the wind. Your job? Hold that wing control bar straight, and trust me, it's going to take some muscle. Second, you need to hit a higher speed before you even think about rotating. Keep that nose down to the ground a bit longer to prevent a premature liftoff. This isn't the time for a pop-off surprise. Now, here comes the tricky part, rotation and liftoff. You want a faster rotation than your regular takeoff, a smooth but swift push to get those wheels off the ground pronto. Once you're airborne, the weight shift control does its magic, naturally aligning with the relative wind. Picture it like setting up a wind correction angle, or crab angle if you want to be fancy. As you climb, the weight shift control points toward the wind, and your ground track should be right down the runway centerline. You're adjusting those controls to combat the crosswind, keeping that straight ground track while facing the wind. It might feel a bit odd since you're not pointing directly down the runway, but trust your eyes in the centerline. Check that ground track often. We don't want any surprise drifts happening. The rest of the climb is business as usual, maintaining that perfect ground track with your trusty crab angle. Now, let's talk about some no-nos during crosswind takeoffs. Don't let that windward wing go too high. We're not aiming for the stars here. And hey, during the takeoff roll, don't let the wing weather vane into the wind. That's just a recipe for trouble. Remember, more speed before rotation is your friend, and a slow rotation? Not cool. And of course, once you're up there, don't slack on that drift correction. Alright, let's unravel the mystery of ground effect during takeoff. Picture this. When your weight shift control aircraft is cruising really close to the ground, magic happens. That's ground effect. It's like a performance boost, but there's a catch. It works best when you're keeping a steady attitude at low speed and altitude, like during takeoff. Now, here's the deal. Ground effect is most potent when you're just lifting off and accelerating to climb speed, and also when you're gracefully gliding down for a landing. The trick is, when your wing is playing around in ground effect, you get a reduction in upwash, downwash, and those pesky wingtip vortices. Since your weight shift control is a high wing champion, ground effect isn't as show-stopping as it would be for those low-wing airplanes. Still, during takeoff, the whole shebang, the roll, the lift-off, and the initial climb, happens right in the ground effect zone. As your aircraft lifts off and rises out of ground effect, things get interesting. The weight shift control needs a little more angle of attack to keep that lift coefficient in check. And guess what? The induced drag and thrust required decide to have a little party and increase. Now, because ground effect reduces drag, your aircraft might feel like it's ready to take off at a lower airspeed with less thrust. But beware. As you climb out of ground effect with not enough airspeed, your initial climb might start feeling a bit wobbly due to that drag sneakily increasing. In conditions like high-density altitude, scorching temperatures, or if your aircraft is loaded to the max, you might get airborne but struggle to climb out of ground effect. That's a bit of a sticky situation, not being able to clear obstacles or even flirting with the idea of settling back on the runway. The golden rule here? Additional power is your best buddy to counteract the drag that creeps in when you leave ground effect. But hold on, during that initial climb, your engine is already pumping out max power. The only way out of this conundrum is to lower that pitch attitude, gain some extra airspeed, and brace for a bit of altitude loss. Now, here's a nifty trick for your weight shift control playbook. If you've got a spacious runway or zero obstacles in sight, ground effect can be your superhero. Use it wisely to amp up your initial acceleration, thanks to the reduced drag. And if you're dealing with not so ideal surfaces, the strategy is to load up those wings during the ground run and gracefully lift off with the helping hand of ground effect before hitting full-fledged flying speed. Just remember to ease back on that angle of attack once you're out of the ground effect groove and looking to soar away. Ground effect: it's like having a secret ally during takeoff, but use it wisely. Handling short field takeoffs and conquering steep climbs in fields with limited space or pesky obstacles demands precision and skill. The goal? Execute takeoff and climb maneuvers that result in the briefest ground roll and the sharpest ascent. Always stay true to the manufacturer's guidance. The AFM-POH holds the sacred script for power settings, trim configurations, airspeeds, and every other detail. To navigate short field takeoffs and achieve the steepest climbs safely, you've got to be well versed in the between VX, best angle of climb, and VY, best rate of climb, speeds. VX gives you maximum altitude gain over the ground for a given distance, less than VY but more than your minimum controlled airspeed. This isn't routine flying. Avoid cruising close to the ground at VX speed in gusty winds to dodge the stall roller coaster. If there's a question mark over clearing an obstacle, it's wiser to pack up and trailer away. Safety trumps all. But if you're up for a short field takeoff challenge, optimize your strategy. Shed the co-pilot and excess baggage, wait for favorable winds or lower density altitude, and choose the longest runway with the shortest obstacle. Think of it as your standard takeoff with a few additional steps. In the realm of short field takeoffs, it's a meticulous coordination between attitude and airspeed. Nail the coordination, and you'll soar with the shortest ground roll and the steepest climb. This isn't your everyday flying routine. It's a calculated maneuver that demands your top-notch skills. When the field is short, obstacles loom large, and the stakes are high. Channel your inner pilot maestro, follow the manufacturer's hymn, and conquer that short field takeoff like a pro. Embarking on a takeoff from a short field demands a meticulous approach right from the get-go. Before even a hint of movement, ensure the weight shift control is in prime condition with the manufacturer's specified trim setting. This pre-takeoff ritual ensures your focus remains unwavering on executing the perfect technique and monitoring the aircraft's performance throughout liftoff. Now, there's a bit of debate among the authorities. Some swear by holding the brakes until the engine hits its maximum revolutions per minute, RPM, before unleashing the weight shift control onto the runway. However, it's worth noting that not all weight shift control aircraft can handle the brakes at full throttle, making this method a bit of a hit or miss. Alternatively, if the brakes are a no-go, waste no time throttling up to full power immediately. No gradual increase, slam that throttle to the max without letting the engine bog down. Let the weight shift control start its roll, allowing the wing to naturally find the optimal trim position for minimal drag as you speed toward liftoff. It's all about that swift acceleration.